Now we are on to slide 13. And in slide 13, we will see a demand curve. And on that demand curve, there are different degrees of elasticity. So on that demand curve, we have perfectly elastic, we have unit elasticity, we have inelastic, and perfectly inelastic. So along one demand curve, you can have varying degrees of elasticity along one demand curve. So one demand curve doesn't have one type of elasticity, but varying types of elasticities. Now, on to slide 14, we are going to examine some of the determinants of price elasticity of demand. And one of the determinants of price elasticity of demand is the strength of consumer demand. And this basically looks at the fact that for essential goods or for necessities or goods that we have a habit or a custom of purchasing, it's likely to be inelastic. What does inelastic mean? A change in price is going to have a smaller change on quantity demanded because it's a necessity. So, for example, if it's a good that you buy on a weekly basis or a monthly basis and it's a good that you need, then more than likely when prices change, it's not going to affect your demand in a great way. Another determinant of price elasticity of demand is household income and income elasticity. As your household income increase or fall, there's likely going to be a change in your demand pattern for that good or service. Price elasticity is therefore dependent on household income because the greater your income, then the more your demand will change. Another determinant, we are on to slide 15. Another determinant of price elasticity of demand is that of price of substitute goods. Now, this will affect the price elasticity of demand. Example, the price elasticity of demand for powdered milk will depend on some extent to the price of soy milk or any other milk substitute. Because if the price of powdered milk goes up, then the change in demand for them would depend partly on how much demand switched to other breakfast cereal. So elasticity is dependent on the price of a substitute good. So for example, like I said, if it's powdered milk, the price elasticity of demand for powdered milk will depend on what the extent to which the price of other substitutes of powdered milk is available in the market. So for example, the price elasticity of demand for powdered milk would be dependent on soy milk, the availability of soy milk or the availability of moo milk or Nestle milk or another type of milk in the market, and whether consumers are willing to switch to these other type of milk or breakfast cereals. Another determinant of price elasticity of demand is that of substitute goods. The more substitute goods that are available, and we are on to slide 9. Just a minute. We are on to slide 16. So the more substitute goods that are available, especially clothes substitute, the more elastic will be price elasticity of demand for a product. So for example, if I'm buying a good and there are many, let's say breakfast cereal, and there are many substitutes, when price change, I can easily switch to a substitute. So my price elasticity of demand is going to be elastic. The time period is also another determinant. Over time, consumers' patterns are likely to change. And if the price of a good is increased, the initial response might be very little change. So if you go to the supermarket to buy a product and you realize there's a change in price, immediately you may not change your price or you may not change the amount that you buy in that product. But in the long run, you may switch from that product to another substitute product. So in the short run, demand tends to be inelastic. You don't have much time to make a change. However, in the long run, it gives you enough time to find a substitute and to make a change. So some of the determinants of price elasticity of demand we saw was income, the price of substitute, the number of substitute, the time period, as well as the strength of consumer demand and household income. We are now on to slide 17, which examines point arc elasticity, and then we move on to look at point elasticity. So we cannot talk about elasticity for a whole demand curve, and earlier on we saw that the elasticity will vary along a demand curve. So we can only refer to elasticity along a portion of the curve, not along the whole curve. However, we can talk about elasticity between 2 points. So when we measure elasticity between 2 points, this is called arc elasticity. So elasticity measured between 2 points is called arc elasticity. So if I'm on a demand curve and I want to measure the elasticity between point A and point B, that is called arc elasticity. Now, how do I calculate arc elasticity? Arc elasticity is calculating the elasticity of demand between two given points. So if it is, let's say, for example, if the price of X rise from $1.40 to $1.80 and demand falls from 220,000 to 180,000, and I'm asked to calculate the arc elasticity, here we have the formula. So the formula for arc elasticity is change in quantity over change in price multiplied by price plus price 1 plus price 2 over quantity 1 plus quantity 2. So again, arc elasticity is measuring elasticity between 2 points on the demand curve. And the formula is change in quantity over change in price. And remember, how do we measure change? Change is measured as new minus old over the old times 100. Right? And then we move on into slide 19 to examine what is called point elasticity. And instead of measuring elasticity between 2 points on a demand curve, if we were to measure elasticity on one single point on the curve, let's say at point A, we wanted to measure elasticity. This is known as point elasticity. And it is necessary to know how quantity demand will react to an infinite small change. We call that infinitesimally small change, which is a very, very small change in price. So point elasticity is elasticity measured at a point on the demand curve, whereas arc elasticity is elasticity measured between 2 points along the demand curve. We are going to move on to examine another type of elasticity, and that is called price elasticity of supply. And when prices change, not only is there a change in demand, but there's also a change in supply. So in order for us to know how responsive supply is to a change in price, we calculate price elasticity of supply. So price elasticity of supply is the responsiveness of supply to a change in price. Now we are on to slide 21. How do we calculate price elasticity of supply? So like I said, price elasticity of supply is the elasticity of supply, and it measures the responsiveness of supply to a change in price. The formula for price elasticity of supply is percentage change in quantity supplied over percentage change in price. Now, when the supply of a good is fixed, for example, antiques or vintage wine land, supply is said to be perfectly inelastic, which means the elasticity coefficient is equal to 0. Now, we interpret the elasticity coefficient in the same way that we did for elasticity of demand. So, when your price elasticity of supply is greater than 1, it's elastic. If it's less than 1, it's inelastic. If it's equal to 1, it's unit elasticity. If it's equal to 0, it's perfectly inelastic. And if it's equal to infinity, it's perfectly elastic. However, when you calculate the coefficient, the answer is not always negative like we saw with demand. Because remember, there's a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. When price increased, quantity supply would also increase according to the law of supply. Right? So we interpret the elasticity coefficients in the very same way that we interpret it for price elasticity of demand. And an example is given on slide 22. If there's a 10% increase in the price of pens, which causes a 25% increase in the supply of pen, what is the price elasticity of demand? I guess you would have to calculate that. What is the percentage change in quantity? Percentage change in quantity supply is 25. Percentage change in price in the price is 10%. So that would give us a price elasticity of demand of 2.5, which means it is elastic. It's greater than 1, so it's elastic. In the other example, if there's a 10% fall in the price of pen, which causes a 25% decrease in the supply of pen, what is price elasticity of supply? So change in quantity supply is minus 25, change in price is minus 10. So we have an elasticity of 2.5, which is also elastic. Right? On the next slide, we're going to see we are now on slide 23. Supply is elastic when the percentage change in the amount producers want to supply exceeds the percentage change in price. So it's the same thing that I explained when we were looking at price elasticity of demand. When we say supply, when it's elastic, change in price is less than change in quantity demanded, or the change in quantity demanded is greater than the change in price. If it's inelastic, a change in price brings about a smaller change in quantity demanded. So this is the same interpretation as when we were interpreting price elasticity of demand. Now to examine some of the determinants of price elasticity of supply. One of the determinants is the amount that costs rise as output increase, so changes in cost, the time period, the range of alternatives open to the producer, and the cost of attracting more factors of production, which means more resources. So let's move on to slide 25 to see how the time period affects price elasticity of supply. So the market period is so short that suppliers of a commodity are limited to existing stock. So for example, when demand first increased for fish, the only effect on the change in demand will be to raise the price of fish. For supply of fish is fixed in the market period. So in the short run, you're not really able to change the supply. So if there's an increase in the demand for fish, immediately somebody who's selling fish is not able to change the supply of fish. So in the short run, price elasticity of supply would be inelastic. However, in the long run, what's going to happen in the long run? In the long run, then you have enough time to go out and get fish, and the supply of fish, you're able to increase the supply of fish. So, on to slide 26. The short run is a period long enough for suppliers of a commodity to be altered by increases or decreases in output, but not long enough for fixed equipment used in production to be altered. So in the long run, in the short run, you are not able to alter or increase your fixed equipment, but you may be able to alter your output slightly. The higher price level induces suppliers to increase the output in order to increase their profits. Therefore, in the short run, they will intensify the use of existing fishing fleets. The price will fall slightly and supply curves become less than perfectly inelastic in the short run. However, what's going to happen in the long run? In the long run is a period enough where you could increase your capital equipment. You have enough time to build more factories, to get more machinery, more boats, whatever you need to be able to supply more fish. So in the long run, more boats are built and the supply of fish will increase further. So in the long run, supply tends to be a little more elastic, right? So in the short run, supply tends to be inelastic, a little more inelastic, whereas in the long run, it tends to be more elastic. Now we are on to slide 28. We are on to slide 28 and we are looking at a new type of price elasticity. And this time we are looking at a type of elasticity called income elasticity of demand.